Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, the podcast for mid-career professionals. Our topic for this week is why having a plan is necessary. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, along with me is my esteemed colleague and partner in legal crime. I guess that's not really a crime then, and all things legal, Dr. Joe Hamlet. How are you doing today, Dr. Joe?
I'm doing pretty good, Dr. Dave. Ready to go.
Ready to go. As mentioned, well, I shouldn't say as mentioned, we'd like to thank all of our viewers and listeners for joining us again. If you're new, we hope you enjoy this podcast. If you're returning, thank you for your support. And with that, Dr. Joe, what are your thoughts on why having a plan is necessary?
Well, Dave, that's a very good topic, very good question. I'm going to reflect back on, and we've shared this analogy a lot of times, just the idea of taking a short trip. When you have you made a plan, kind of mapped out your route, or do you just get in your vehicle and start driving in the direction you think you want to go? That's kind of a simplest way to think of it. If you're going somewhere, have you made any type of plans that's going to facilitate you arriving where you want and not show up somewhere and think this is not where I was trying to go or where am I? So again, something as simple as that we may not really think about, but that's creating a plan, and that is going to help us be successful. We may be a little bit later or even earlier, but the idea, we had an idea in mind where we're trying to go, how we're going to get there, and that's the simplest plan. No different than like when I went back to school. I started out with this, okay, I'm going to go to school for 4 years, have my degree. That was the start of my education journey. But I quickly learned that was also discouraging because I didn't know how I was going to get there. It wasn't until I broke it down to something that I could even check off a list to say that I've done these things, I can move to the next level. I've done these things, I can move to the next level. And that for me, what was the change that helped me get to where I'm today, because I at least created something I could follow and not just winging it or just jumping
Right.
out there and diving feet first, not knowing what my outcome should be or what I wanted it to be. So that those are two examples of, why a plan could be necessary.
Yeah, I like the analogy about the road trip because it made me think of when my wife and I went to the Grand Canyon last year. If we didn't have a plan on start to finish on where we're starting and where we want to end up to get to the Grand Canyon, we just started driving, we probably would have wound up in Washington, D.C. a week and a half later. I don't know. So you have to know what roads you're taking. You have to know, when do you need to gas up? When's a good time to get something to eat? So, just those different things. What then to kind of expand upon that plan, what about contingency planning? What if there's a flat tire? What if the plane gets delayed? What if the you know bus runs out of gas? What are these things that you're going to do? So that's why when we talk about having a plan and it's necessary, it's not imperative. And Joe and I talked about the word imperative before the podcast. It's Nothing is really imperative, but it's a very good idea to have a plan and why it is necessary. A lot of the huge accomplishments that we have throughout history, without a plan, they wouldn't have been able to be accomplished. It's not like, well, Dave's going to go to the gym and start bench pressing 3 times his weight just to get acclimated. Well, just trying is the important part. Well, that's fine, except now both my shoulders don't work, and maybe I should have started out with something a little bit lighter. So
Right.
having a plan, I remember seeing on it's a shame that we have to make references like this, but a TV show where a person was saying, "Hey, I want to lose weight. What do you do? Eat more fruit instead of candy. How come I'm not losing weight? Well, you're eating like 25 bags of oranges." It's like,
Right.
you well, I'm not eating as much fast food. What is not as much? Well, I used to eat 12 hamburgers a day. Now I'm eating just 5 hamburgers a day. It's like, what is your plan here? You can do that. It might just take a little bit longer, but having a plan, especially in processes or um, projects or understanding behaviors, within individuals or behaviors of the machines or software around us. That's important because that plan can help you get through the rough things, and also it's great for maintaining things. And I'm going to use the military as an example. We had a contingency checklist, which is just a set of plans on if this event occurs, what do we do? You turn to that page, there's the plan of action. And like with maintenance schedules, are we just going to change the oil in the car, every 2 weeks because we feel like it, or once every 10 years because we feel like it? What's the maintenance plan? So to get the maximum longevity before the system breaks, there are some companies and industries that will use a piece of equipment till it breaks to the point of failure.
Right. Yeah.
But the military is a great example of all branches where periodic maintenance can take something that would only last 5 years and make it last 50 years. It might cost more or a little bit more or actually a lot less because you're not buying this $5 million piece of equipment every 4 years. So that's 20 million if I did my math right, versus maybe you spend $6 million over that course and you still have the same piece of equipment and it's running just fine.
Well, Dave, we keep talking about having a plan, but what's in addition to that plan that's needed is also understanding
Mhm.
that plan, or understanding your resources, understanding the things you need, and the the analogy or the example you just gave with maintenance, periodic maintenance, understanding the cost of, okay, if I don't do this inspection, or if I don't do this preventive maintenance every 5 years, every 10 years I'm going to be replacing this. So if we really take a look at the cost of what it's going to take to take it down intentionally, or do we wait for catastrophic failure and then pay for it that way? So understanding the ramifications of not having a plan, or not understanding what the intent behind the things we do. Like you just said, you may have a plan in place to go from, I'm in Kansas City to Chicago, and I have a plan in place. I know where I'm going to start, or I know I'm going to stop, have food, gas. What if I run into a detour? How do I now apply, kind of like you said, the contingency plan to that? Now I can't just go straight through to Chicago. Now I have to go over to, Kentucky and then go north. So just understanding those things. So I can't just, plan for, okay, from here to Chicago, it says I need this much gas. This is all the money I'm going to take. I mean, just again, just understanding that there could be changes, there could be detours, there could be alternate routes, all those types of things that should be taken into consideration. So understanding, and that's why it's important for you to not just create this plan, but also understand, if this breaks down, do I have a fallback plan? If
Mhm.
something happens, like you said, or my engine blows, well, in mind, not to get you paranoid about traveling, but at the same time, have you really thinking about, okay, what happens if my plan doesn't go as planned? What do
Mhm.
I do then? What type of things should I be considering? What do I
And that
really need to know?
And that's a great point, Joe, because we're talking about plans and making plans and how they're necessary and having contingency plans, how those are necessary. And they really are. I mean, there's different levels of planning, but having a plan, what goes into that? I said periodic maintenance could cost more potentially.
Right,
There's your cost analysis. Maybe
right,
periodic maintenance isn't the route to go because it is cheaper in today's
right.
day and age
Just
because
to
there's built-in
replace. Yep,
obsolescence.
yep.
Maybe it is cheaper just to replace that refrigerator instead of trying to fix it over and over and over. So, there's that aspect of it. And then there's also the aspect of just the awareness that goes into the plan. I might want to go to the Grand Canyon. Hey, October, great time to go. December, January, when there's 6 feet of snow on the roads, maybe not such. I mean, it'll be
Right, right.
beautiful. I'm sure
Yep.
it's one of the most beautiful things in the world, but that's a different plan. You can't expect to do it in the same amount of time. And, there's other obstacles that are in play. There's other things to consider. And that's why having a plan is necessary because it should help you understand all, some of the, not all, but some of the what ifs that go into it. Here's your goal. I want to go to the Grand Canyon. Do I have the fuel? Do I have the means? Is the car in the right shape? This and that. How am I getting there? Plane, train, automobile, bicycle, walk. What time of year is it? What are the logistics behind this? So when you're thinking about having a plan, these are some of the things to think about. Again, it goes back to, kind of general business 101: time, money, schedule, logistics, legal, finances. I mean, these are things that you got to think about. Very few things you can start for free. There are some businesses you can start for virtually nothing. Um, and some states don't charge anything for that, or some areas don't charge for that. But these are things to consider, when you're talking about why a plan is necessary. In the early military days, one of the things that I remember that was impressed upon me was have a plan to learn your job, and then, by the way, if you do something wrong, here's a disciplinary plan for you to help you get back on track. It's
Right.
not a bad thing, Dave. It's just a plan to help you. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. We're here today, made it out alive, but still, what are these different plans that are in place to help behaviors, to help processes, to help projects be more efficient, productive, and on time?
Well, Dave, to that point, even if if you're looking, you're mid-career and you're thinking about advancing in your career, are you just going to start doing things randomly to get you to that next level to where you want to go? Or are you going to start considering, what type of certifications do I need if I need any? Do I need a higher level of education? Do I need to, start working on other things, or do I need to improve my skills in certain ways? So that's already the start of a plan. Start trying to understand those things you're going to need to get to that next level. So you're probably doing it. It may not be a formal plan that you've written out, or put it in a nice spreadsheet or anything like that. But if you're already starting to think about those things, those are already the makings of a plan. It's just not formalized. So most of us probably already do it, but it's a little bit more helpful if you write it down, or if you draw it out, or if you use, you're a more visual person, putting the little x's or o's or the squares or the circles, saying, okay, I need to do this by this point. I need to, because you could also have a plan that there's no deadlines, and so again, that could be that same trip you're going from here to Chicago. Either you're doing it over a weekend or you're doing it over 2 weeks. So again, that's also important as far as the plan, a timeline, because you may have a short window or you may have a window that doesn't matter, but some of those types of things matter. So again, if you're mid-career and you're thinking, I want to be at this level by this time, then you might have a timeline on it. You might need to say, hey, I need to finish my master's degree at this time. And then I may need to get some experience. So what does that look like? Or what is your version of that? What do you think you need? So again, just wanted to, make sure people were aware that they might already have a plan. It just may not be the formalized plan, but you're probably already thinking about some of those things you already.
Joe, I like what you said about documenting it, because there's something psychological in the human psyche that's been, I don't know, ingrained into us inherently, that if we write something down, it's more of a commitment. And it's also another reason why having a plan is necessary is it helps you to track things, keep track of things, make sure you're not skipping steps, overlooking things. It keeps you from drifting off one way or the other. It helps keep you focused. And that's one of the things that I love about having a plan, and it's documented, is just being able to help keep that focus going, because there's a lot of great ideas out there, and I like to chase rabbits and chase them down the holes, and run with them for days and weeks. But that when you're on a time crunch, that's not necessarily the best thing to be chasing,
Bro.
you know so but yeah, that's kind of the way I think about it. Having the steps laid out, know what you're working towards, know where you want to go, staying focused, and just being flexible. And part of, and you've mentioned it, there's different aspects of the planning. But if you don't know where to start, reach out to your supervisor, a friend, a trusted colleague, a mentor, a coach, and ask them. Networking is a great tool when you put it to use.
Right. Well, I think we're at the time where we want to throw out our weekly challenge for the week. So for this week's challenge, we want you to identify a project that interests you, then create a simple plan that shows all the necessary steps needed to complete it. And before, you get nervous about, I don't know all these things, that's fine. But at least identify the project and then think of the things that are obvious. I mean, things that you know you're going to need. So it doesn't have to be this detailed 30 step plan, but something that maybe has two or three highlighted points or four where you know these are things I'm going to need. Because from once you get that identified, then you could start breaking those things down into smaller, attainable goals and milestones. So that's what the weekly challenge is for this week. Identify a project that interests you, then create a simple plan that shows all the necessary steps needed to complete it. And again, it doesn't have to be this detailed 30 to 100 point plan, but just something that you know that you're going to need. If you're going to drive to Chicago, what's one of the things you need? You need a car. So again, just those obvious things that you can think of, and I guarantee you'll start to think of those other things because now I have a car, I need gas. So I need to make sure to make the tires are good. So that's how it starts to work. You get those high level, okay, these are the necessities. Then I start to so remember, we have that free downloadable weekly challenge journal that you can use. We also have the readiness assessment and a career diagnostic. So those are all free to you. Feel free to jump out there and grab them and use them to the best of your ability, whatever's going to help
Thanks, Joe. The only thing I'm going to add to the weekly challenge is really key on that necessary part, because as much as I want to get that pinstripe um, workout suit to go to the gym, I don't think that the blue or pinstripe
you. Right.
workout suit is necessary.
No,
It
I
might be a
don't think
nice
so.
to have. It might build my confidence when I go strutting in there, my stripes and everything, but that's not necessary. I don't believe that's a necessary step for me going to the gym. I think I might first have to start with a membership, or maybe just walking
Yep.
through the front door without turning around and running away real quick. Maybe actually talk to someone. So, just those things that are necessary. Joe, we're at that time in our podcast. What are your final thoughts?
Again, this last comment or discussion, I briefly talked about the idea that you probably already have a plan in place. It's the idea that, like Dave said too, that you write it down or formalize it to make sure that even if you use check boxes or to cross it out once you're done with it, more you can visualize it or see it, the more you can hold yourself accountable. So I think that would be my biggest recommendation is to put it on paper, put it somewhere where you have to see it, that you're gonna recognize it, you can check it off, you can scratch it out, whatever it takes to help you continue down that path.
Yeah, and I'm not going to add anything to that. I think that's a great summation. If I said anything more, just be parroting what you just said. So we'd like to thank all of our viewers and listeners for joining us for another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, the podcast for mid-career professionals. If you have any ideas or thoughts, shoot us an email. That's the quickest way to get in touch with us. It's on our website. It's also on should be in our postings every Monday with our podcast. So if you got something out of this, like, share, follow. That's the best way to get the word out. That makes us feel like we're doing something productive. We're going to do this no matter what. But it's kind of nice to know that people are out there listening. If you have any comments, please let us know. It'd be great to hear from you. Until next time, we want you to continue being your not so ordinary you.